Excellencies, members of IFIMES Council, members of IFIMES, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. Allow me to welcome you on behalf of the International Institute for Middle East and Balkan Studies, IFIMES from Ljubljana, the organizer of today's lecture of Mr. Albin Kurti, with the title 10 Years of Kosovo Independence, What Should Be Done in the Next Decade. Albin Kurti is deputy of the self-determination movement Lëvizja Vetëvendosje at the Assembly of the Republic of Kosovo and president of that movement. He was also a political prisoner. He spent more than 2.5 years in prisons in Serbia. Since the country's liberations and even after independence, he has been put in prison by the UNMIK administration and the regime of Hashim Thaçi, president of Kosovo, over 20 times. The last time he was imprisoned was from 24 November till 29 December 2017. The Thaçi regime is leading a political process against him and has been sentenced to a suspended sentence of 18 months in prison at first instance court. At the last parliamentary election that took place in Kosovo in June 2017, his movement, Vetëvendosje, became the strongest political entity in the Kosovo parliament with 32 deputies out of 120. For comparison, the party of Prime Minister Ramush Haradinaj has only 10 members. Party of Foreign Minister Bešet Pacoli has only 2 members in the Kosovo parliament. In his lecture, Kurti will talk about current events in Kosovo, its challenges and international relations, as well as its future. Mire se vi, zoti kryetari I Lëvizje Vetëvendosje dhe deputati I parlamentit të Kosovo, zotin Albin Kurti, dobrodošli. Gledajte nas preko interneta, potem bomo še današnje predavanje desetletne odvisnosti Kosova, kaj treba storiti v naslednjem desetletju, Albina Kurtija, predsednika gibanja Samoopredelitev in poslanca v Skupščini Republike Kosovo. Gospod Albin Kurti je poslanec gibanja in predsednik tega gibanja. Bil je tudi politični zapornik, več kot 2 leti je preživel v srpskih zaporih. Od osamosvojitve Kosova je več kot 20krat bil zaprt strani administracije UNMIK režima Hašima Thaçija. Prav danas, 29. januarja, mesec dni od izpustitve iz pripora, v katerem je bil več kot mesec dni v zaporih, lahko svobodno rečemo, Hašima Thaçija. Na zadnjih parlamentarnih volitvah je njegova stranka postala najmočnejši politični subjekt v kosovskem parlamentu z 32 poslanci. Za primerjavo, stranka premijera Ramusha Haradinaja ima le 10 poslancev, a stranka ministra za zunanje zadeve Bešeta Pacolija le 2 poslanca. I imamo še danas imamo predavanje predsjednika pokreta Samoopredeljenje i zastupnika u Skupštini Republike Kosovo, gospodina Albina Kurtija, koji će predavati na temu 10 godina nezavisnosti Kosova, šta treba uraditi u idućoj deceniji. Albin Kurti je zastupnik u Skupštini Kosova i predsjednik pokreta Samoopredeljenje Lëvizje Vetëvendosje. Bio je politički zatvorenik, u srpskim zatvorima preživio više od 2,5 godine, a u režimu Hašima Thaçija UNMIK-ove administracije više od 20 puta. Upravo na današnji dan, prije mjesec dana, ispušten je iz zatvora u kojem je preživio više od mjesec dana. Najjači je politički subjekt u kosovskom parlamentu, ima 32 zastupnika. Za poređenje, stranka premijera Ramusha Haradinaja ima svega 10 zastupnika, a stranka ministra vanjskih poslova Pacolija ima samo 2 zastupnika. Mr. Kurti, its floor is good.
Thank you very much for the invitation and for having me here today and for all these kind words. Dear Dr. Bečirović, Director of IFIMES, dear Mr. Butler, dear Professor Ernst Petrić, honorable ambassadors, honorable Ambassador of Republic of Kosovo, Mr. Nežmire Žepi, Honorable Ambassador of the Republic of Albania, Mr. Plumchazimi, dear Mr. Janusz Kravac, dear Professor Martin Berishaj, ladies and gentlemen, honorable guests. In less than 3 weeks from now, the Republic of Kosovo will celebrate its 10th anniversary of independence. I remember very well the 17th of February 2008. As representatives of people of Kosovo, 109 members of the Assembly of Kosovo out of 120 MPs in total declared independence of Kosovo as democratic and sovereign state. Huge crowds of people were celebrating in the Mother Teresa Street and Skanderbeg and Ibrahim Rugova squares around Parliament and government buildings. This was the second massive enthusiasm of people of Kosovo. The first one being the liberation of Kosovo from Serbia in June 1999, when police and military forces of Milosevic's regime withdrew after 78 days of NATO bombardments over Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. Yet, this is not Kosovo's first republic. On 23rd of March 1989, Kosovo's autonomy was abolished violently by Belgrade, and on July 2nd, 1990, Kosovo declared itself a republic much earlier than Slovenia and Croatia declared their respective independence. Our first republic was the republic for resistance, under the conditions of classic occupation of Serbia and imposed apartheid. Albanians were expelled from factories, hospitals, schools and universities. This decade was one of an open-air prison where 2 million Albanians were kept suppressed and Serbia's administration of Kosovo served as prisoners' guards. Our country was turned into prison and the Republic made the resistance. Democratic lead of Kosovo with Ibrahim Rugova's leadership, University of Pristina and students' protests, uprising of Kosovo Liberation Army and NATO air bombardments of Yugoslavia were 4 consequent stages of the 90s, from passive peaceful resistance to active non-violent resistance to people's armed struggle to international military intervention. Walls of prison fell down, Kosovo got liberated from Serbia and put under administration of United Nations mission. We were much freer, but not free. UNMIK had the first and last word on everything. International bureaucracy never voted on anything and was not accountable to the people of Kosovo or its institutions. The decade after liberation, the first one of the 21st century, looked like a hospital under international administration. People were treated like patients and international officials were behaving like doctors and nurses. We were not ill-treated physically, but yet we had no right to self-determination. Whenever we asked for independence of Kosovo, we were told by internationals that we have to be patient. Finally, after failed talks with Serbia, Kosovo's parliament declared independence, and it seemed that we are leaving the hospital situation. UN was replaced with EU and UNMIK with EULEX. The European Union Rule of Law Mission, which replaced, therefore, UNMIK. Leaving hospital neither made us free nor we entered properly, let's say, in school, namely the school of EU integration. International administration was replaced with international protectorate. After the shift from prison to hospital in 1999, therefore from prisoner guards relation to patient-doctor one, the next promised shift didn't exactly occur. We were supposed to move out from the hospital and enter the school, shift from patient-doctor relation into student-professor one. But after declaration of independence in February 2008, we managed to get out from hospital, but somewhat only with one foot. And again managed to enter the school, but merely with one foot. We are in between hospital and school, not able to leave entirely international protectorate and not able to join fully the path towards EU membership. 5 EU members do not recognize independence of Kosovo: Spain, Slovakia, Romania, Greece and Cyprus. Kosovo has KFOR but doesn't have its own army. EULEX and KFOR are expressions of EU and NATO getting integrated into Kosovo and not the other way around. Therefore, it's not very much that Kosovo is joining EU or NATO, rather NATO and EU got integrated within the state of Kosovo. On the side of the successes of independence, we should mention 114 recognitions, then our movement's local government in Pristina, the capital town of Kosovo, with our mayor Shpend Ahmeti, with radical transparency, with the stoppage of illegal buildings, with fixing healthcare services, improving infrastructure, 102 new laboratories in schools, etc., to our incredible Mailinda Kelmendi, who won numerous awards in judo, culminating with Olympic gold medal in Rio. During this decade of independent Kosovo, inter-ethnic crimes fell. And now it is intra-ethnic crimes, the ones within Albanians and within Serb community, that grew, and not between Albanians and Serbs. In the municipality of Pristina, the village of Brnica, where Albanians and Serbs live together, is an example of not only coexistence, but of cooperation as well. Next decade will be decisive for the independent state of Kosovo. Weak state of Kosovo should not fail. Serbia from outside and internal corruption in Kosovo are competing who will damage more our present and our future. Kosovo should get into European and Euro-Atlantic path and move faster by building Europe within state institutions and social organizations of our country. In parliamentary elections in Kosovo held on 11th of June 2017, our political movement came out first, and now we have 32 MPs. Next to us are older parties, PDK and LDK, which both fell to 23 MPs. In those elections, we ran with a platform of 40 measures that our republic shall undertake. In those elections, we have listed these 40 measures, and now I will list a dozen of them, therefore not all of them, still believing that they are decisive in order that second decade of our independent state becomes very different from the first one. The first measure, the implementation of developmental vision based on the establishment of the Sovereign Fund of the Republic of Kosovo, the Developmental Agency of Kosovo, and the Developmental Bank of the Republic of Kosovo, starting with investments that will lead to the increase of the value of Trepča mining complex, the Kosovo Energy Corporation, and the Post and Telecommunications of Kosovo, PTK. Sovereign Fund would take over socially owned enterprises from Kosovo Privatization Agency and publicly owned enterprises from the government, being linked directly with the parliament and reporting to it, ending brutal and abusive privatization, and enabling our diaspora and, for example, our pensionist trust fund to buy shares, to become a stakeholder in the sovereign fund. Our diaspora brings remittances officially around 750 million euros per year, unofficially over 1 billion euros. While the budget of the state is only 2 billion. Irish, Greek, Armenian and Jewish diasporas certainly bring more money back home, but not in such a high ratio with the budget of the state. Pension Trust Fund has 1.6 billion euros and 97% of it is invested outside the country. Likewise, the privatization fund with around 600 million euros is stuck and not used for investment. On the other hand, small and medium enterprises are lacking easy access to financial capital. Trade deficit of Kosovo amounts to 1/3 of our GDP, and GDP per capita is 9 times less than EU average. On the other hand, each annual European Commission progress report on Kosovo mentions that there is insufficient access to financial capital for businesses and economic zones and industrial parks are failing because there has been no prior national developmental plan. Therefore, market economy is failing due to high interest rates of commercial banks with no investment bank inside. That's why we need a developmental bank with several years of grace period and with interest rates which are lower than 3%, so small and medium enterprises start to bloom. 3/4 of bank assets are managed by 3 banks only, and 80% of banks are foreign ones. That is why the first measure should be this developmental vision, where the state of Kosovo is not a spectator to economic development. If one could use the language of film or theater, the state should not be the director or the script writer of the play, of the drama, but neither spectator in the audience. State should be an actor and a factor in the set, on the stage. Measure 2, the establishment of armed forces of Kosovo and its inclusion into NATO. Measure 3, the construction of new energy capacities from public capital and private one, the establishment of a common energy market between Kosovo and Albania, the revision of the electrical energy fees, and the reformation of rates. In this sense, we would include our public funds for building new power plants without excluding the private one, which should come in addition, but never as a replacement for engagement of public funds. Measure 4, the irrigation of farmland, the complete revitalization of the irrigation system Iberlepens, and studying the possibilities for its expansion. And the increase in subsidies and grants for farmers and the full insurance coverage of farming products. All governments of Kosovo in these 10 years of independence allocated only around 2% of the state budget for agriculture, and the most of it went for the ministry itself. This must change. Measure 5, the full reconstruction of the cadastral system with special focus on the settlement of property issues. Measure 6, the development and implementation of a master plan for the supply of drinking water in the cities and the treatment of sewage, as well as the construction of sewage systems in all villages with over 200 houses. Measure 7, the reduction of the number of ministries and reform of administration, where Stabilization Association Agreement gives some useful guidelines. At present, Kosovo has a government with 5 deputy prime ministers, 21 ministries, and 70 deputy ministers. And they doubled salaries of all of these positions in December last year. We are a relatively small country with absolutely big government. Economically, Kosovo is trade and consumption without production and redistribution. Or revenues are mainly from customs and remittances, while government expenditures spent mainly on asphalt and offices. We would stop further increases in salaries for members of parliament, the prime minister, and other elected officials, and return to previous levels. Measure number 8, health insurance for all the citizens of Republic of Kosovo. If one in Kosovo has a car accident, there is a car insurance, but not human insurance for those who suffered the car accident. Likewise, we must have insurance for all members of the Kosovo police force and firefighters, because at present there is none. Measure 9, the tripling of work inspectors and the limitation of the work week to a maximum of 5 days a week for all non-managerial positions. The establishment of the Special Chamber of Labor within the justice system in order to process any infringements on workers' rights. Every year, a dozen of workers die while working, usually in the construction business, and every third employed young man or woman works without contract. Measure 10, the establishment of 160 new daycare centers, kindergartens, in cooperation with the municipalities of Republic of Kosovo. A free meal each day for children in all public elementary schools, grades from 1 to 5, and the rectification of schools in the Republic of Kosovo, emphasizing quality and linkage between education system and employment economy. Measure 11, an inquiry on the privatization of the Kosovo Energy Distribution Services KEDS, as well as on the contracts of the construction of the highway Vërmica-Prishtina-Merdar and Prishtina-Shkup, which costs 3 times more expensive than market prices without ever making public the contracts. Over 10 million euros per kilometer of a 4-lane highway. And also an inquiry on the privatization attempts of the Post Telecommunications of Kosovo. Measure number 12, the vetting through special legislation of all the prosecutors and judges of the justice system in the Republic of Kosovo. There are around 500,000 cases in dusty shelves of our judiciary. We need to increase the number of prosecutors, the number of the judges, and also the number of professional assistants to prosecutors and judges. At present, 3 judges or 3 prosecutors, they have 1 professional assistant. Should be the opposite. 1 judge or 1 prosecutor must have 3 professional assistants. The adoption and implementation of the anti-mafia law, the solving of the case of the violent death of Astrid Dehari in the prison of Prizren, the establishment of the special unit of investigation on the solving of all the assassinations that have remained unsolved. Measure 13, opening the dialogue on social and economic issues with Serb minority citizens of Kosovo. 6 years of dialogue for normalization of relations between Kosovo and Serbia were without much results. There has been too much investment and too little return. No definition of end goal, namely normalization, in the name of creative ambiguity, as they call it. You may use creative ambiguity to start a dialogue, but you cannot end up a dialogue through creative ambiguity. You need real solutions. And what actually normalization means? If you ask people in Brussels, in Pristina, and in Belgrade, you will get totally different answers about the meaning of the word normalization. Then there has been no symmetry in the process. EU was facilitating, not mediating. Kosovo was rather a topic than a side in this dialogue. And no proper results were achieved, like there was no advancing into EU integration and no integration of Serbs into Kosovo. New dialogue that I propose should be democratic rather than diplomatic. In Kosovo rather than Brussels. Among the people, with the people, rather than in offices for the people. Open rather than closed. From below rather than from above. For development rather than for tolerance. And for what kind of integration? Definitely for socio-economic, not only institutional. In factories and universities, not only in the parliament and government. Through equality, not only through privileges. If we would start to view Serbs of Kosovo and Albanians, not just as Serbs and Albanians, but also in their social roles, like students, professors, taxi drivers, farmers, engineers, doctors, unemployed, etc. If in one village in Kosovo we bring together Albanian farmers and Serbian farmers and encourage them to speak about fertilizers, seeds, agricultural food processing, agricultural market, machinery, and so on, that kind of dialogue with from below and not with top-down approach could integrate different communities. Therefore, we affirm dialogue from below with Serbs of Kosovo, an open, democratic, social dialogue for development, in contrast to current dialogue in Brussels, which was going on throughout 6 years, from 2011 to 2017. A dialogue that remained closed, diplomatic, and without any conditions for Serbia, while being always for internal matters of Kosovo. Therefore, equality and development integrate people and communities. These changes are definitely vast. They would mean a new republic for Kosovo, a third republic of Kosovo. First republic being the one for resistance, 1990. Second republic, which has 10th anniversary on the 17th of February this year, being a republic for privatization. And now we need a third republic, a republic which should be the one of socio-economic development and European integration. We need a third republic in order to save the second republic as a republic. Let me emphasize that we as political movement, we are both for EU integration and for NATO membership. We want to join EU and we want to join NATO. We believe that Europe should be defended, that EU should be defended. In spite of criticism that we have for EULEX, we want Kosovo to join EU. We are very much aware that this is not going to happen anytime soon, but we are ready to engage sincerely and seriously in this path. In the aftermath of the World War II, Europe was rebuilt towards European Union, relying on 3 pillars. Pillar number 1, peace with anti-fascism. When Robert Schuman had his famous speech on 9th of May 1950, that was done on the 5th anniversary of the victory over Nazi Germany and fascism in Europe. So peace with anti-fascism. While in 1938 in Munich conference, Neville Chamberlain, the former English Prime Minister, he was more involved in peace with fascism. Peace with fascism brought World War II. Peace with anti-fascism is one of the 3 main pillars of EU today. Second pillar is welfare state. From, let's say, French and German republicanism, French one for revolution, German one for federalism, for development, always economic growth being combined with social justice, meaning social insurance and progressive taxation. From Italy to Scandinavia, welfare state had 3 golden decades from 1945 to 1975. And I believe that welfare state should be defended, and there should be struggle to defend the welfare state. And the third pillar is NATO security umbrella. I know that all these 3 pillars, peace with anti-fascism, welfare state, and NATO security umbrella, are not that strong as before. But I think they should become once more strong. For 3 decades in Kosovo, the first one during the 90s, Serbia's occupation and apartheid, the second one after the liberation war and under UNMIK, And the third one, after declaration of independence, Kosovo has been ruled strangely by the same paradigm, called the stability paradigm. The paradigm of short-term political stability, otherwise named also as crisis management. But we've seen that when stability is the goal, then authoritarianism is the consequence. The international quest for stability in Kosovo brought local authoritarianism as the guarantee for it. We certainly need stability, but we need even more so development, democracy, and justice. Once we would seek for these, development, democracy, and justice, then stability would be the consequence. Therefore, we need stable progress rather than stability as progress. A progressive hope rather than the conservative fear. Whereas the trinity of stability, security, and peace remains an offer from above you can't refuse, the other trinity of development, democracy, and justice represents the boiling demand from below. I think that our political movement is responding best to this demand from below, and that's why we became the main political party in Kosovo, the biggest parliamentary group in our parliament. To conclude with, after failed coup d'etats in Montenegro and Macedonia, resulting in Montenegro's inclusion into NATO and Social Democrats taking power in Macedonia, after the victory of Socialist Party in Albania, Kosovo should become next step of the progressive changes in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kurti. Now I will begin with some questions, and later from the public we will take also if we have time. My first question is, you spent 2 years in Serbian prisons, more than 20 times in Kosovo, as mentioned. You somehow lost your ideals and dreams because of everything what you survived?
No, I think in prison I made use of it to strengthen my ideals and my convictions, probably by deepening through readings I've done there. But I never have doubts in my ideals and my convictions due to prison. So in this sense, you know, in prison there is very small space, but you have a lot of time. And I made use of that time by reading books, because now I was 5 weeks in prison. I read 15 books. It's almost 5 weeks outside and only 1 book now. So this doesn't mean that one should go to prison, but this means that we really need to deepen our convictions and ideals, and strangely enough I used prison for that.
Prime Taci and Vucic cooperate excellent. As we know, they now communicate directly without intermediaries. However, the fact is that this direct communication is more like a mafioso than a political one.
I would definitely agree. I think that dictatorships are out of fashion, but authoritarianism is very alive. From Putin to Orban to Erdogan to Taci to Vucic, till recently to Gruevski. One could mention also Djukanovic. We have these all over the region. We have these authoritarian figures, and I think that they cooperate very smoothly with each other. And it's very interesting that usually they have a very rich brother when they are young, and very rich son when they get a bit older. So this is not even capitalism. This is feudalism. And I think we should fight that. Vučić is trying to become the fourth Serbian leader in a century time. After Nikola Pašić, Aleksandar Ranković and Slobodan Milošević, Aleksandar Vučić wants to become the fourth one. And this has nothing to do with democracy and Europe. It has everything to do with history of Serbia as we know it. And I must say that in 1 century time, Serbia had only for 2.5 years a democratic leader. That was Zoran Đinđić before they assassinated him.
How is it possible that European Union, as a condition for visa liberalization, requires demarcation with Montenegro? And this condition is not recorded anywhere in official European Union documents. No one knows that this has originally been recorded and that this decision has been made. Hashim Thaçi accepted some certain verbal obligation, maybe. Do you think about this?
I think it's likely, but it's still enigmatic to me. It's very strange that this demarcation contest that we had with Montenegro became a criteria for visa liberalization. Out of 96 criteria, we have fulfilled 94. Only 2 remain unfulfilled. The first one being combating organized crime and corruption, and the second being fixing the demarcation issue with Montenegro. We have good relations with Montenegro. They are into NATO now. They want to join EU. We also want to join EU and NATO. We don't want any problems with Montenegro. We have enough problems with Serbia. But likewise, I believe that demarcation agreement was a wrong one. And that's not the fault of Montenegro. It's the fault of Kosovo State Commission. They made the mistake. They took the burden of proof on the side of Kosovo, relying only on cadastre books. In these 8,200 hectares, neither Montenegro has cadastre registers. So why we have to prove only that our land is our territory? There has been violations of laws from surpassing the competences that this committee had till falsifying maps. And that's why an investigation should take place there. But it's important to find out how come that this criteria entered as a condition for visa liberalization for Kosovo. At that time, Deputy Prime Minister Hashim Thaçi, who is president now, he signed the agreement, and yes, he must have some interest in this. But we have to see what kind of meetings, what kind of people decided so unjustly. Yet, even if we fulfill this criteria, there is no guarantee that we would get visa liberalization. Because there is this other criteria, combating organized crime and corruption with the judiciary. And I'm tempted to say that because we didn't fulfill this criteria, maybe we got another one. Because this criteria would eliminate a lot of political figures who are ruling in Kosovo, and they wouldn't be able to sign such harmful and wrong demarcation agreements.
Many analytics and observers think that the dialogue between Pristina and Belgrade will finish Vučić and Albin Kurti. Are you ready for that dialogue, or do you want it at all? Do you want it?
I am not against dialogue in principle, but I am against dialogue without principles. That was the case in Kosovo so far. We have to reframe the dialogue, and we have to see for what end goals this dialogue will serve, and there cannot be any more of these asymmetric dialogues without any conditions for Serbia. No, Serbia killed more than 10,000 civilians in Kosovo during the war. 20,000 women were raped. 120,000 houses were destroyed or burned down. 860,000 Albanians were expelled in the spring of 1999 from Kosovo toward Albania, Montenegro and Macedonia, and over 1 million were expelled from their homes. 1,200 cultural artifacts were stolen from Kosovo. Pension contributions, bank deposits, all were stolen by Milosevic. And in Belgrade there is no regret, no penitence for that. And they never apologized, and they never paid a single euro for that. We still have 1,500 missing persons, not only Albanians, also Serbs and Roma among them. But I think part of the problem is that also Mr. Vučić used to be Minister of Information in the regime of Milosevic. I remember in 1998 he was having press conferences in front of Grand Hotel, and paramilitaries of Arkan were staying at the Grand Hotel, and in front of Grand Hotel he was having a press conference, and I was organizing protests, students, for the release of university buildings and premises. So I think that one should not forget this fact, but in general I'm not saying that I'm always against dialogue. I'm against dialogue with all principles. And you know what normalization means with this metaphor of hospital. Normalization means when the patient finally does not confuse reality with fantasy. And I think Serbia should not confuse reality with fantasy. I think that they have been undergoing these negotiations, all the time thinking how they can make use of negotiations to strengthen Serbia within Kosovo now that Kosovo got out from Serbia. So in order to have changes in the region, rather than change the relations, I think some of the states should change. Kosovo is not that normal country. With divided town of Mitrovica, without army, huge unemployment and corruption, is not a normal country. But also Serbia is not a normal country. They never faced their own criminal past. Serbia does not know where it starts and ends. Serbia does not know how much territory it has, neither how much population. So, if we have these two abnormal countries, and we normalize relations between them, this adds to abnormality. We rather need normal Kosovo, normal Serbia, and then you get normal relations. Never forgetting that normalization means being able to separate reality from fantasy.
As you mentioned in your speech before also, there is enormous criticism of the role of the international community in Kosovo. What is important to change to improve its work in Kosovo in the interest of the citizens of Kosovo?
Well, we have EU rule of law mission in Kosovo, but they have executive powers, which are not limited neither in their time nor in their scope. You can see the head of EULEX going to private colleges and delivering speeches, but they never come to our parliament and show some accountability. So they never reported to people of Kosovo or to our institutions. And I think that in order to progressively engage, we cannot continue without accountability. And there should be a shift in the topic. We need more EU experts on agriculture, economic development, and more professors from, let's say, Sorbonne, than a retired French general who would come to Kosovo and become EULEX head, as was the case before. So we need more knowledge of Europe and development of Europe and social values of Europe, than more prosecutors and judges and policemen. Because this has been done from this conservative approach, thinking what we can lose in Kosovo, not what we can gain. Thinking how it can get worse, not how it can get better. And in order to improve, we need a post-conflict mission who would develop us, who would help us develop. I'm afraid that EULEX is not a post-conflict mission. physically, chronologically, they are post-conflict mission. But logically, they are pre-conflict mission. You know why? Because they are in Kosovo prior to a conflict that should not reoccur. So they came after the war, but all they care is how to keep the situation so war does not reoccur. So it's not like Marshall Plan. World War II is over, let's go toward development. No. It's like we've stopped the war and let's make sure that this ceasefire stretches so long that it looks like peace. So here is my problem with ULEX mission. It's very low ambition for Kosovo. Not within some kind of developmental paradigm, but only this conservative approach. That's why they call it crisis management. Let me say just a bit more on this. That some years ago, some students from University of Constance, Germany, came to visit us. And I see their master program was written conflict management. And I asked those students, what happened to the word resolution? It used to be such a nice word, conflict resolution. You know, why conflict management now? You know, why this corporate language as if a conflict is here to stay? It merely has to be managed. So I'm for conflict resolution and for development, rather than for crisis management. Actually, even the word crisis, I think, comes from the, I forgot now, ancient Greek or Latin. It is a point of no return in disease. A point of break, a rupture, a point of break in the disease, crisis, of a person who is ill. That's where crisis comes from. So they think that we are in crisis, and crisis shall not neither explode nor implode, but not really to eliminate the cause of the crisis. That's why crisis management. But precisely this logic keeps us at the brink of explosion, even though it does not explode. So we need to have a shift toward progressive orientation and away, I believe, from this conservative approach. And then EU would help us a lot.
My next question has two parts. The first part is, are you and the self-determination movement ready to take responsibility to lead Kosovo? The second part is a question also. Self-determination movement is a social democratic movement. However, some want to present it completely different. What can you say about this?
Well, different people want to present us differently. I cannot really speak about all these viewpoints, but yes, I can say that we are ready to be in the government, sooner better for Kosovo. And we're looking forward to early elections. And I think that it's important for our republic to have a progressive government for the first time. All the time we had a right-wing or extreme right-wing governments. It's very good to try a progressive government. And I'm optimistic and looking forward to that.
What does mean for Kosovo the success of the democratic forces in Macedonia led by Zoran Zaev, and completely new ambience and atmosphere in Macedonia now?
I think the victory of Mr. Zaev is a very positive development in Macedonia and for the region. VMRO, DPMNE under Nikola Gruevski reoriented itself since 2006 from pro-Bulgarian to pro-Serbian orientation, and they started to invent an existing tradition from Alexander the Great, and they had this idea of going back to roots with a very xenophobic right-wing approach. Meanwhile, these politicians got very rich, so through corruption and crime, and it's very good that Zoran Zaev became new Prime Minister of Macedonia. Now he is together in the government with some Albanian political parties, what is necessary to be seen there now is that Zoran Zaev is not against Albanians like previous Macedonian governments, and from Albanians it's important to see that they are not against social democracy. So Zoran Zaev has to prove that he is not anti-Albanian, and Albanians have to prove that they are not anti-social democracy. And I'm optimistic that that is doable.
Only Bosnia and Herzegovina did not recognize Kosovo in the region. Even those two countries have a visa regime. You will comment about this?
Well, I know that not only entities in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also political parties are divided first over the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and likewise they are divided over Kosovo. I think that Sarajevo would recognize independent Republic of Kosovo if Republika Srpska wouldn't have its veto power. And even though we're not being recognized by Bosnia and Herzegovina, there's a lot of trade going on. 10 times we more import from Bosnia and Herzegovina than we export. We have huge trade deficit with Bosnia and Herzegovina. Only with Serbia is bigger. So I think that Pristina and Sarajevo should cooperate, and we never forget that Bosniak people and Croat people, they suffered a lot from Belgrade regime, which wanted to turn Yugoslavia into a greater Serbia. And we know that the fact that Bosnia and Herzegovina is not recognizing us is due to Republika Srpska there and influence of Belgrade over it. It's interesting that Belgrade wants to repeat the model of Republika Srpska in Kosovo. They want to create an association of Serb majority municipalities in Kosovo as well. On 26th of April 1991, 14 municipalities in Bosnia and Herzegovina created their association. On 9th of January 1992, they declared independence. 28th of February 1992, they had their constitution. And 14th of December 1995 in Dayton, Ohio, they got international recognition. They wanted to achieve something similar in Kosovo as well, but thanks to the opposition parties, we did not allow that to happen. We're not against Serbs, on the contrary, but we do not put the sign of equality between Serbs and Serbia. We think the state is not the same as people.
Where do you see Kosovo in the next decade? Since it's the title of our lecture today here.
I think that in the next decade, regarding European integration, it's going to be difficult to say for sure that we could become members. But what I would like to say now is that all 6 countries of Western Balkans should join EU at the same time. If Serbia joins EU before Kosovo, then Greece is doing nothing to Macedonia what Serbia will do to us, and even Albania and Bosnia as well, I think. So it is very important that despite the fact that our levels of development and integration are not the same, at the very end we enter on the same day. Just like Slovenia and 9 other countries entered on the same day in 2004. I think it's important these 6 countries of Western Balkans, Bosnia, Montenegro, Albania, Kosovo, Macedonia and Serbia, enter the same day at some point, because all these 6 countries want to join EU. All want to join EU. Not all of them want to join NATO, and since not all of them want to join NATO, let them join how they want. But since all of them want to join EU, let them join in one day. Meanwhile, in these 10 years, I think Kosovo should have an army and become member of NATO. And definitely get development, employment, justice, rule of law, in accordance with these 13 basic measures that I presented for what I call New Republic or Third Republic of Kosovo.
Now your questions, if you have.
Yes,
Please.
dobar dan, želim angliško zelo.
No, you can also in
boste
Slovenian and maybe he is also understand.
Zame je danes zelo emotiven dan, glede na to, da sem si v službi tudi vzel prosto. Gospod Zijad, boste prevajali, ne? Bom rekel, da gospod Škrabec, s katerim sta skupaj Forum 21 je odšel, pripadam po očetu kosovski družini Morina. Eden izmed bolj znanih kosovskih politikov je bil moj sorodnik Rahman Morina. Zato lahko v tem trenutku rečem, da je srečanje z gospodom Kurtijem zame zelo emotivno. Jaz sem bil na Kosovo samo 10-krat. Moj oče je nekdanji novinar časopisne hiše Rilindija, Sadri Morina. Bil je tudi urednik hiše RTV Priština. Moj drugi stric je Azem Morina, ki ima Glareva hotel Nora Zaje. Tako da mi je danes zelo emotivno govoriti o tem, da sem eden izmed redkih Albancov, ki se v slovenski skupnosti upa govori, da je Albanec. Ne samo Šiptar, kot je včasih bilo malo slabšalno. Tudi kot otrok sem to doživljal, vendar sem imel to srečo, da sem delal v policiji, da sem treniral borilne veščine in da sem bil čas opet na te mednarodne inštitucije in da sem bil leta 1998 tudi v Bosni pripadnik mednarodne specialne enote, ker so Američani takrat napadli, kar so imeli za napaditi, ne, in po mojem tudi ekonomsko.
Daj se vprašanje bi prosil.
Ja, bom. Ne, če priješ iz Maribora v Ljubljano, IFIMES je to eno kar dolga pot, da z gospodom Kurtijem lahko spregovoriš. Kaj sem želel vprašati? Imam po očetu 2 polbrata in pol sestrov. Vsi so ekonomsko doštudirali, vendar jih je situacija, kakršnakoli je odpeljala v tujino. Oba 2 polbrata še šla v Kanado, sestra živi v New Yorku. Kaj želim reči? Jaz vem, ko sem se pogovarjal politično z njimi, ne, da so oni glasovali za stranko gospoda Kurtija. Moje vprašanje bo namenjeno temu, je namenjeno predvsem gospodu Kurtiju, ali ga bodo Združene države Amerike podprle za predsednika vlade. Ker jaz, ko prihajam na obisk na Kosovo, nazadnje, ko sem bil, sem opazil pri stricu, ki je bil nekdanji policijski inšpektor in tako naprej, da ima na hotelu kosovsko in ameriško zastavo. In na vprašanje stric, on je iz stare šole Albancev, ki mene ne spustijo zraven. Šta me zanima, ker bi da ne zna. Vse ko stric, zakaj imaš ameriško zastavo? Če si ponosen Albanec. Tako da jaz bi si želel podpore Kurtiju od strani Združenih držav Amerike, če bo postal predsednik vlade. Mislim, da mu je bilo zdaj onemogočeno biti predsednik vlade, toliko pa že razumem stvari, ali pa si domišljam, da jih razumem. Želel bi si, da nov veter pride, predvsem bi pa rad rekel gospodu Kurtiju, da si želim, da bi moj sošolec, ker sem zdaj ugotovil, da on isti letnik kot jaz, letnik 75. Da nek nov veter zavije v Kosovo, predvsem pa me je strah Kosova in ne rad grem na Kosovo. Mojega strica namreč so tudi ugrabili Haradinajevi, nekdanji telesni stražari in zahtevali 5 milijonov evrov odškodnine. Tako da sem jaz takrat videl, da na Kosovo, kar se tiče varnosti in kdo si in kam greš, včasih ni najbolj zaželjeno. Tako da si želim stabilnosti Kosova. Kot sin kosovskega očeta si pa želim, da bi Kosovo vendarle dobilo vizum tudi za Slovenci, da bi lahko ta vizumska liberalizacija šla zelo hitro naprej. Moram reči, da sem bil med kandidati za častnega konzula. Takrat sva tudi z Zijadom videla, kako je Tači odreagiral na Bledu. Njega je zelo hitro odslovil, mene pa tudi. In sem videl, da zaradi morda politične pripadnosti, ker nekako pripadam partizanstvu, Lëvizji, nisem bil dobro sprejet takrat. Sem si pa sam želel, da bi bil in da bi na nek način tudi v Sloveniji na glas govoril, da sem sin kosovskega Albanca, kar pa včasih ni bilo zaželjeno. Gospod Kurti, želim vam vse dobro na vaši politični poti in sem vesel, da ste danes med vami in si želim, da ne bi bili več zaprti, ker mislim, da ni več potrebe za tem. Hvala lepa.
Okay, I can just say something briefly. It is true that international factors have a great influence in politics of Kosovo, mainly the quint embassies, as they call them, 5 key embassies, US, Germany, Great Britain, France and Italy, but especially US, and then Germany as well. And this time in these elections, there was no bonus criteria for Vetëvendosje to participate in the government. Because before there was always, besides winning votes, we had to fulfill some other criteria. This time that was not the case, but others united against us. Some united against us and some did not support us in creating a coalition. And the leader of Democratic League of Kosovo, LDK, was not in favor of creating a coalition with us. I think that things will change in the future, but more than some foreign embassy, I think the reason why they get together against us is because they defend each other. And they have some dirty things that they have done together in Kosovo's economy in this after-war period, because there has been too much emphasis on war crimes, but I think that there are a lot of peace crimes as well, especially in the economy. And there they see Vetëvendosje, our political movement, as problematic, because we are people who are not corrupted and cannot be corrupted. That's why these corrupted politicians, they rather create a front against us than to come with us and change for the better Kosovo. Because every bad situation stays so because someone has interest from that. And I think that majority of people want changes in Kosovo, but some powerful people, not only embassies and foreign factors and conspirative theories, but no, people on the ground, Albanian politicians, they are benefiting a lot from this situation. And that's why we're very critical. We are very thankful toward the role of United States, especially for NATO intervention and recognitions of our independence. But we cannot be saved by US every day. They saved us in 1999. They saved us with recognition in 2008. It is us who should work. And I think that Americans and Europeans are going to support that. But we must be decisive there. And there we have a lot of problems with corrupted politicians who, before and after elections, they get together.
Next question, Professor Gebler.
Mr. Kurti, thank you for your very substantive and interesting presentation. One of the points you mentioned was the necessity of investigation of various assassinations. But you did not mention Oliver Ivanovich in that list. Could you please comment on this?
Yes, I did not mention anyone but Astrid Dehari is a member of our political movement who died in custody. And also one other inmate who happened to be with him in the room and who gave the first aid to Dehari, also died in prison after several months. And I mentioned only this case. Regarding Oliver Ivanovich, I think that there should be an investigation. And north of Mitrovica is a territory which Serbia controls more than Belgrade. So I don't think that there could have happened something without knowledge of Belgrade. In 1999, Milosevic was in front of a very interesting choice. When he withdrew police and military forces of Serbia from Kosovo, he had this choice. Either some of the power for all of the Serbs in all of the territory, or all of the power for some of the Serbs in some of the territory. And he went for the second, just like in Bosnia and Croatia. Because 6% of Serbs in Kosovo could have had power in different institutions of the system. No. He wanted to territorialize the presence of Serbs, and that mainly in the north. And a lot of parallel structures were placed there, including the notorious Secret Service of Serbia and security sector from police. I remember when I was in Požarevac in prison, the guards who were there serving were talking with each other. Where are you these days? And one of them was saying, I'm all over the place, from Novi Sad to North Mitrovica. And 1 or 2 days per week, they were serving in North Mitrovica. This is in 1999 and 2000. At that time, the leader of bridge watchers, people who were there to make sure that Mitrovica stays divided, was Oliver Ivanović. Bernard Kouchner, the former minister, French minister, but also the former head of UNMIK in Kosovo, has an interesting book called Warriors of Peace. In that book, he mentions Oliver Ivanović as the leader of bridge watchers, of a paramilitary group. They expelled 11,000 Albanians in February 2000, because Albanians were not majority in the north of Ibar, but they were a majority in North Mitrovica. In February 2000, they were expelled and Serbs became majority. It is possible, I cannot be sure of this, but it is possible that Oliver Ivanović was, while participating in this group, Bridge Watchers, which was a criminal group, he witnessed many crimes. Meanwhile, he was in very bad relations with Mr. Vučić. So while witnessing many crimes, maybe even regretting about his past role, and meanwhile in very bad relations with Vučić, I think this could be the circumstance that led to his assassination, definitely done very professionally. He couldn't survive that attack. That attack was not done by some angry man. That is a cold-blood murder by somebody whose profession is that. This is my impression, but definitely some investigation is needed there.
Gospodin Gajšek.
Hvala što ste dobro pričali kako je posle 10 godina na Kosovo. Ja imam jedan utisak da živite sada kao godine 45. Posle rata, svjetskog rata. Da se sve ove velike sile i na Balkanu sada suprotstavljaju jedna druga. A imam dvoje pitanja. Prvo pitanje je kad ćete imati svoju vojsku? Jer u prošlom, kad ste prošli put bili ovdje, to pitanje je bilo postavljeno i ja sam mislio da je to jedno od velikih potreba države, samostalne države, kad ima svoju vojsku, onda može da se i drugčije ponašaju i političari. A drugo pitanje je međunarodno. Kakve su možne paradigme između Palestine, priznanja Palestine i Kosova? Jer države koje su priznale Kosovo i države koje su u svetu, mislim, i države koje priznavaju sada Palestinu, sada dolazi do jednog, kako da kažem, svjetskog poremećaja u priznavanju novih država. Sasvim se slažem sa vama da je NATO potreban, kao jedan izlaz za mirno rješenje. To su ta dvoje moja pitanja. Prvo je vojska, a drugo je da li postoje kakve paradigme između priznanja Palestine i Kosova.
First, I think that we need an army. When we will have an army, it cannot be known because we need change of constitution.
Yeah.
And for that we need majority of Serb MPs who have guaranteed seats in our parliament. So it's not easy. But our president convinced Serbian MPs to stay in the parliament session while he was voted as president. So he knows how to do it. So perhaps if he would be insisting enough, we could have had an army as well, because he knows how to keep Serbian MPs in the parliament when he needs them. But definitely electing himself a president was not was of a much more priority than for Kosovo to have an army for him. And but likewise, I think that what Ahtisaari's plan enables us to have for security force of Kosovo was not used fully. If I say this as a joke, but it could easily be true, that if an army could have been done with a tender, you know, they would have done it till now, you know, through bidding. And on the other hand, yes, Palestine does not have full membership, but likewise Kosovo does not, but I do not see many other, I must say, parallels. They are quite different, and I think history of Kosovo is different also because it's part of Europe, and Albanians are not only in Kosovo. Albanians are in Albania, and you know, I say that Albania is one of the safest countries in Europe because it's surrounded with Albanians. So I think there are very much differences, and now let's see how things develop in Middle East. But Serbia always wanted to portray the conflict with Kosovo as a religious one, and it was never a religious one.
No.
No. But Serbia always wanted to say that they are defending Christianity of Europe and so on and so forth, which is not the case, because Albanian Muslims, Albanian Catholics, Albanian Orthodox fought on the same side throughout history. And even in this latest war, we have in Kosovo Liberation Army, Albanian and martyrs who were both Muslims and Catholics, but above all and prior to all they were Albanians. So one cannot really cannot turn it into a religious war. I think that it is Churchill who said that if you want one conflict never to end, make it religious.
Yes.
So I think that is what Serbia actually wants. I think that conflict was neither ethnic. We did not fight with Serbia because of our ethnic difference. We were different and we fought. No. The conflict was between Albanians as a nation and Serbia as a state. I think in general Albanians are a very strong nation, but they have weak states, both Kosovo and Albania. I think Serbs are not that strong nation, but they have a strong state. So even during Milosevic, we were not combating our neighbors. We were combating Belgrade people who came in uniforms. So I think a nation was fighting a state. And it was never ethnic, let alone religious. And this idea to compare with Palestine, I think the desire of Serbia behind this idea is to turn conflict into a religious one. We know very well what Mr. Dacic said about Kosovo, that it's an ISIS country, you know. preposterous things, absurd things.
Arthur, any question?
First, Mr. Kurti, I want to welcome you here in Ljubljana in the name of all Albanian community. My question is, as you mentioned before, Serbia is importing 10 times more than we are exporting, and also Bosnia. Both states have not recognized us. But Serbian-Albanian Chamber of Commerce in Albania is now the second strongest behind Albanian American Chamber of Commerce, which is, I mean, ludicrous, amazing. We are not connecting with Albania, our brothers, while Serbia is making, I mean, preposterous, you know, in selling and buying, and in goods, they have expedition and logistics, and I know everything. So I want to say, why are we not why do we not start connect with the Republic of Albania and the border? The border was set on 28th November that we should open the borders in Vlora. Our two prime ministers meet. The border is still closed. I mean, closed. Like it's not borders. You know what I mean? Like Schengen. What is happening here?
I think that
we are brothers.
yeah, I think that many politicians follow business. It is the business which is leading, and a lot of Albanian powerful businessmen in Kosovo. You know the saying, "Don't ask me about how I made the first million." Actually, you don't have to ask because we know they made it during occupation. And still those businessmen who made their first million during the occupation, they are powerful in Kosovo. And I think they are a part of the problem. We need new business community whose first million is not from the occupation times. And I think our institutions of the system should be at the service of that, to create a new business community without these strings attached from the sanctions, from occupation and from war. On the other hand, EU countries are much more integrated than Kosovo and Albania.
France and Germany.
Yeah, like they have a common market, they have common currency, and they have the Central European Bank. We have none of this. And unfortunately, our elites got very rich while we remain divided. And it's not surprising that even Serbia can make use of this.
Mr. Kurti, thank you very much for your presentation. This was very interesting one for me as well. So I have two questions, if I may. During your presentation, you didn't mention specialist. We notice now in the news that some changes of the law on specialist court were sent to the parliament. Your party supports the changes. Which are these changes which you support? And of course we notice immediately the reaction of Quint embassies in Pristina, which all condemn the idea. The second question is, we noticed some statements of Mr. Dačić, Foreign Minister of Serbia, about the swap of territories. Territory in the north of Kosovo for the Preševo Valley. What is your opinion about this? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. And it's great to see you again, this time in Ljubljana, not in Pristina. In 2015, we opposed to the special court. We think that we need a normal court. Enough with special treatments, because whenever it's something special, it leads toward experimenting. And I think we need normal courts to combat organized crime and corruption. And this special court, I believe it's unjust and will be harmful, because you cannot try other than Kele Albanians there. And it's one ethnic court. However, Mr. Thaci at that time twisted arms of so many MPs, so they changed their votes. On 26th of June 2015, the special court did not pass in the parliament. But on 3rd of August, they changed their vote, and they got 82 votes. So amendment number 24 was added to our constitution and opened the path for special court. 2.5 years later, President Thaci now said that he made an agreement with international community 3 years ago, and he delivered his part, but it's international community which did not. Namely that he was expecting us to get visa liberalization, UNESCO membership, I think Interpol membership as well, and a couple of other things, in order to have this special court taking action. But now, since we didn't get these, he's against special court. Well, I don't know whether this is true. I don't think so. But I think that this shows that Mr. Thaci made secret negotiations with harmful results, and he should resign. It's not logical for him to ask abolishment of special court and not to resign. If he would have framed his initiative in a different manner, for example, I regret I made a big mistake, but special court is a great harm to Kosovo, so let us stop it. Meanwhile, I resign and I apologize. If he would have framed it this way, then we would consider it. But these late night initiatives to suspend the court with a simple law, when actually you did constitutional changes, something that you have made with 82 votes, you cannot annul with 31 votes. We are not going to enter into these manipulations because they are neither serious nor sincere. Thaci has to prove that his goal is to remove special court from Kosovo and not his name from special court, which I believe is still the case. I haven't seen the generosity of somebody who is for general will and general interest. Without seeing this, we're not going to enter into this game and become leverage for him. Because we know very well that he would like to increase his capacity for negotiations with internationals regarding the names which would be included in the indictments. One of the ambassadors in Pristina asked me, but how can you think, or how Thaci can think, that he has made an agreement with internationals about such things? And I answered with a question. How is it possible to think that President of Kosovo remains outside prison without some agreement with somebody? 18 years after the war, it's impossible to think of him staying out of prison. So I think it's going to be another court with more politics than justice, and this worries me. There has been news that there will be 60 people indicted, but when I saw this news, I knew immediately what it means. 60 is the quorum of the parliament. That means that, they're going to take us all, so we better unite, And let's see now how things develop, but without seeing a proper, serious and honest initiative, I think we better stay out from these kind of manipulations that they are preparing, where they take care of themselves but not of Kosovo. And I think that Serbia wants us to want territorial exchange. Serbia wants us to want territorial exchange because the one who wants first makes the mistake. Because if Kosovo would have said now, yes, we agree, we want territorial exchange, Serbia will say, okay, this means that you're giving up the north and we're not giving you value for share. It's like in chess, there is this situation, Zugzwang, it's a German word, that in chess you are in a certain position where you wish it was not your turn to play. You understand? You wish it was not your turn to play. Usually you like you to be on the move, like to play with white pieces. But there are certain situations when you wish it was not your turn to play. And I think Serbia wants to push us into this Cuksland. So we want to have territorial exchange, and in this sense they show up as somebody who controls both. I think that state of Kosovo declared its independence in these borders, and justice, rule of law should apply all over the territory, including the north.
Mr. Juric?
Mr. Kurti, just one short question. How do you see the role of Slovenia in Kosovo, since we were one of the first states who recognized your independence, and we have some soldiers there in K4? How do you see political, economical role of Slovenia in Kosovo?
Well, I think that people of Kosovo are very thankful, very much so, and they recognize the help of Slovenia, not only by recognizing independence of Kosovo, but much earlier. We never forget the Milan Kučan's speech at Cankarev Dom during the hunger strike of miners of Trepča. And also a lot of delegates of Kosovo's assembly who declared the Republic of Kosovo on the 2nd of July 1990, and after one adopted constitution in Kačanik, got shelter in Slovenia. After the war there has been some economic cooperation, but mainly now is Nova Ljubljanska Banka and IPCO, Mobitel. But I think we could have much more cooperation than this. And yes, Slovenia was among the first who recognized independence of Kosovo, so people of Kosovo view Slovenia in very positive terms.
Now for the end, what you would tell your Serbian citizens here in Serbian language?
Ja bih želeo da kažem da pokret za samoopredeljenje nije pokret protiv Srba. To je pokret koji želi da socijaldemokratija pobedi na Kosovu i da najzad na Kosovu imamo progresivnu vladu koja nije desničarska kao ove druge koje što smo imali. Ja verujem da su i Albanci, i Srbi, i Turci, i Romi, i Aškalije, i Bošnjaci na Kosovu ravnopravni građani i da bi oni trebali da se integrišu putem ekonomskog razvoja i inkluzivnog obrazovanja. Mislim da možemo mnogo više nego toleranciju, ne samo da koegzistiramo zajedno, nego i da sarađujemo. I zato nam treba dijalog koji bi počeo od građana Kosova zajedno sa institucijama sistema i pre bi bio društveni dijalog za razvoj nego diplomatski po zatvorenim kancelarajima u Briselu. Ja sam optimista za budućnost Kosova i mislim da Kosovo može da bude pravi primjer kako razvoj, demokratija, dijalog utiču na integraciju svih putem ravnopravnosti, a ne putem privilegije bilo koga. Mi smo bili ugnjetani, tlačeni, eksploatisani u prošlom veku. Mi nikad ne želimo da uradimo bilo kome išta slično.
The last question, please.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I want to ask you, you were talking a lot about the border with Montenegro and about the special court and about talks in Brussels. My answer is Kosovo doesn't seem a serious country if it doesn't hold its agreements. You told how it came to those agreements, but still, in terms of just looking them as a legal issue, do you think this hurts Kosovo in terms of how, how she can be trusted by any partner if she breaks the rules that she, for who cares what reason she agrees upon? How do you see a way out? And would you act differently?
Yes, I agree. This demarcation border agreement with Montenegro, Kosovo not ratifying it, of course we're paying a price. However, I think that an investigation process should start for a previous state commission led by Mr. Murat Meha, and I think that that would lead toward the investigation of our now Mr. President, who used to be at that time Foreign Minister and Deputy Prime Minister. There has been violations of laws in our constitution, and we cannot close our eyes in front of that. We would, in the future, all international agreements that our government would do, our men's government, would definitely be such that we would obey and stick to them. But definitely these corrupted politicians have done some agreements which made a lot of harm both internally and externally.
Thank you very much. Please.
Mr. Kurti, Mercedes is maybe more than free. I want to ask you something. Were the politicians serious when they did those agreements? What do you think about politicians? Was that serious?
No,
because
they are not serious politicians.
Because I think that's a game. I don't see any seriousity in this agreement. Because those are matters of Kosovo, not matters of international community.
Yes, I fully agree. These are not serious people, not let alone serious politicians. They are reckless, irresponsible. Very often they sign agreements that they haven't read. So they think that US will take care of everything, or EU. So if we do some mistake, it is US and EU who is going to correct it. But it doesn't function like that. Politics doesn't function like that. And definitely they are not serious. And they think that, okay, we do a liberation war and NATO intervenes. We declare independence and US pushes other countries to recognize us. But you cannot continue forever like this. Maybe in some decisive historical moments, somebody helps you, and that's great. But on everyday life, in political and institutional decisions, you cannot expect to be corrected all the time. And at the same time, not to resign. They should be held responsible for what they did.
I have just one more question. What do you think about ethnic cleansing and North Mitrovica after the war? Why do politicians do nothing in that case? Why don't they ask international community to help to reintegrate the Albanians pushed out from North Mitrovica after the war?
I think that these politicians got very rich while Mitrovica was divided. There was no cost they had to pay, neither in their careers, neither in their wealth. They just want to stay in power in Pristina. They don't care much what happens in the north. I think that all people who were expelled, not only from the north, should go back to their properties. If they did not sell their properties, they should go back to their properties, and it is the state who should ensure, who should make sure that they can go back. This should be coupled with economic development, because that is going to integrate people. If Trepča would be revitalized, according to our experts, with less than 200 million euros, if we would invest in Trepča, this would bring up to 500 million in exports of metals, and that would be produced there. because Trepča is rich not only with lead and zinc and gold and silver minerals, but also with these rare earth metals that are used for touchscreen devices. There is a layer of indium here. So indium, gallium and germanium. Trepča is rich. And economic development, when there is development, there is integration. Only at first sight looks paradoxical that mafia is multi-ethnic. You know, Albanian mafia and Serbian mafia, they're in the north and south, they cooperate very smoothly. You know why? Because there is development, there is profit. So, whenever there is development, there is integration. There is no such thing as static integration. Integration is integration into a process, joint process, a process that you share. If you want to integrate, there must be things that you share. And there has to be process, economical, political, social, that people share. And I think jobs, production are such processes. I recognize that finances and services are important branches of the economy, but manufacture is even more so. When people produce, they integrate. Now, Ziad, me, Bakhtiar, we have water, we're drinking water here, and each one of us is drinking his own water, right? So consumption individualizes. But if we would have to produce this water, we would have to get together. Somebody to produce the glass, somebody to filter the water, somebody to do the marketing, the bottle, and so on. So if you produce, people get together and they integrate. But we have become only a consumption society, because each one of us has its own throat and mouth, and we consume that individual life. We become individuals, and only individuals. It is through production that people get together. You have to work, labor. Labor, production brings people together. And in Kosovo we had deindustrialization with brutal, abusive privatization. They turned factories into casinos. And all the machinery was sold as scrap metal for a smelting plant in Nikšić, Montenegro. So I'm against centralized and planned economy, but I'm also very much against this brutal privatization, because it means like we've shifted from one extreme to another. And there is not only one type of capitalism. There is American and British capitalism, continental European, Scandinavian, Japanese model, and so on. So one should choose what type of capitalism, because we're definitely going to live in capitalism. What type of capitalism is a very relevant question. Not only to choose the final products of capitalism, but the type of capitalism as well. And this has never been done in Kosovo. They told us that, you know, market will solve everything. Market is the truth. And you end up buying the cheapest history book.
Please, a brief.
Thank you. It's very short. The last one. With all the problems that you have mentioned today, where do you see Kosovo in the future, in the next decade, in terms of joining EU or NATO, and all some big topics that are already discussed in Kosovo?
First, I see Kosovo joining NATO within these 10 years, sooner better, of course. And secondly, I see Kosovo joining also EU if we do 6 countries at the same time. Yeah. But if Serbia enters before us, we're not going to join EU. And but for me, it's more important to build Europe within Kosovo. Because some people have this strange imaginary, I noticed, that we're going to join EU as if we're going to start to live in Paris and London. And no, London, not anymore. Berlin. No. It's like, we're going to join EU, but we'll continue to live in Pristina. So we have to build Europe within us. We're not going to transfer ourselves and live elsewhere. No. We become Europe. So I think we should change this viewpoint and start to develop our country. 90% of foreign direct investment in the world goes to already developed countries. We think that somebody else would come and invest in our country. No. We should start development, and through development become attractive for further investment. And not, I don't know, pretend that we are attractive for foreign investment because they are going to save us. Without Kosovo Liberation Army, there wouldn't have been NATO intervention. Likewise, without we starting first development, with our diaspora, for example, with developmental bank, developmental agency as represented, sovereign funds, nobody will come and invest here in our country. And we should start to use our own money for our own development, and in that way further investments will come.
Thank you.
Just another short question. First, as you as a politician, what do you think about the Albanian, how do you say, unification as a politician, and then as a son of an Albanian, as an Albanian yourself?
Yeah. Well, Kosovo does not have right to join Albania. Article 1.3 of our constitution does not allow us to join another country. And I think this is a liability, this is a violation of external aspect of our sovereignty. And I think that Kosovo should have the right to join Albania. But we have to synchronize with Albania, and for that matter there must be two referendums in Kosovo and in Albania. There cannot be only one referendum. I think that if at present there would be two referendums, people massively would vote yes. But now Kosovo's constitution does not allow us. I would vote yes as well, but not against somebody else, not for the sake of any kind of revenge to anyone else. But the will of the people is so, and Albania has mountains and water and sea, and we do have good agricultural land and mines and minerals, and we are complementary in this respect. And but again, never Third Balkan War for unification, only if it can be done peacefully and democratically.
Okay. Zia, please.
I would like to thank Mr. Albin Kurti for his interesting lecture, which will help us understand better the situations in Kosovo, in the region in general. At the end, I would like to invite you to our next lecture, probably in March. It's a very important person, political person from Slovenian politics coming to the Institute. Thank you.